right. Well, welcome all you wonderful motivated minds. Today, gonna just talk for a little bit about something that I wasn't sure I was gonna put on this channel. I was thinking was gonna put this on my Daily Man channel, but I thought, you know what? I think I'll just put this here for now, and I'd like to do more of this on the other channel because of the focus of it, right? But so why am I talking about societal impact of the male athlete? Well, because it's been coming up recently. I've been seeing a lot of stuff on the news lately. A lot of, to be really frank, it's like a lot of disappointing stuff. A lot of guys are making some really boneheaded moves, and you got to wonder, like, what's going on, man? You kind of got everything going for you, as it seems, right? Only to make these really bad decisions. I've touched on this a little bit before, and so I thought, why not? Why not do a live stream and take this, get into the weeds a little bit, okay, about, what the societal impact of these amazing specimens. I mean, these are like superhumans, by the way, right? I mean, that's what athletes are. Professional athletes are like superhumans. I mean, if you've ever been to, I don't know, if you've ever been to an NFL, watch an NFL game, if you've ever been at an NBA game, if you've ever been at a baseball game, these people are freaks, man. I mean, they're amazing. It's weird to see a 280 pound or 300 pound man run and be as quick as they are, right, in the NFL. I mean, these linemen are unreal, and nothing doesn't do justice at all watching any of this on TV. To be right at the plate, or really close on field level seats in a baseball game. I mean, when you see these guys up close, it is kind of wild because they're big and they're strong and they're fast. They're superhumans. That's what I call them. I call them superhumans. They're like, they just are. I was kind of think of, they're like metahumans, I guess you could say, right? I mean, they are a current day form of superhumans. So they do have a lot of impact, whether we like it or not. And there's something that I thought we could start off with that may make a little bit more sense as to why. So here it is. And by the way, streaming from home. Okay, it's a beautiful day outside. You can kind of see a little bit. It's a little blown out, but it's just a beautiful day here in Southern California, man. It's awesome. And I thought I would just do this from home today. I'm home. It's been a kind of an interesting time right now. I'm in the process of moving my office as well, so it's been kind of hectic. So I thought, I might as well just stay home today and maybe stream this from here. So, so bear with me. You might hear my dog. You might hear some noise. You might hear my wife. She's over here in the other room, and all is well. Okay. So, and I'm in my living room. This is where my little setup is at home. It's actually here in my living room where we're at. So let's take a look at this. Check this out right here. Okay. Charles Barkley. We all remember Charles, right? Sir Charles. What did he say a long time ago? Do you remember this? 1993? It was a Nike ad, very famous ad. I'm not paid to be a role model, he says in that ad. I'm paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court, which he did, by the way. That dude, I saw him play, by the way, in person. Guy was an animal. Then he says, I'm not a role model. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids. I agree with Charles. In some ways, I really do. The problem, though, here's the issue, though, I think I have with Sir Charles and what he was saying is, as much as you don't want to be a role model, Charles, as much as you want to tell, and I get where you were trying to go with that, because where he was really trying to go, I think he was trying to advocate for these parents. Look, your kids are looking to me as a role model. You need to be the core to who they're looking for, who they're depending on. And that's true. But you know what? No matter what, no matter what, there's no getting around looking at somebody like that as a role model. You just can't do it. Here's something I thought would be another interesting thing to see. So athletes, they're considered role models because of their presence and ability to help or change lives of those less fortunate. They're role models whether they like it or not. Okay? I mean, that's just what they are, and you can't get around it. People are going to look up to them, especially young people. They're and there really is just no way around it. I mean, once they sign that contract, they're held to a set of standards, aren't they? Just like anybody would be. In fact, when I look at people like this is what I often think of. Anybody of influence, anybody, anybody who I'm thinking of leaders in companies, whether it's CEOs or pastors, any kind of leader like that. Let's just take, just take a pastor, for instance. Once they become a pastor, if you don't know this, they are held to some really high standards, obviously, right? That's why we persecute them so much when they fail, because they're held to such high standards. And they accept that. They actually accept it. I'll never forget one time I was with a friend of mine, a mentor actually of mine, and I was giving a talk at a Christian retreat in Colombia. And there was a day where a couple of the guys in the church wanted to take me out to eat, just me. So we went to this really awesome place, had this incredible food. But while we were there, he, asked if I wanted a beer. I'm like, well, sure, man, why not? I wanted to partake with him and be a part of that experience. But when I got back, I had shared with my mentor what I had done, and he didn't jump on me or anything, but he kind of went, Carlos, hey man, we really have to be conscious around that here, because of who we are to these people. And I didn't quite get that, because I do that here. I'll go out with my buddies here at my church and I'll have beer, whatever. But it was different there. And it's because of the way that they were seeing us. And he's like, look, we really do have to be setting this ultimate example there. And so I never really understood that. But you know what? That's what I signed up for. When I signed up to be a part of that organization and step into those places with those people, I really did assume that role. And so that's why, when you look at things like this, these were much less fortunate people that I was talking to, right? And so just like, again, any leader, look at a teacher. Look at how many teachers right now are unfortunately getting themselves into trouble of really doing, and it throws us like all over the place, right? It kind of is a reality. It fragments our reality when we see somebody who looks like an adult, speaks like an adult, but doesn't behave like an adult, right? And that's no different than a parent. And that's what I'm going to get into in just a minute, because it's not easy. A lot of athletes aren't born, unfortunately, or I should say a lot of athletes, professional athletes, are coming out of really difficult situations usually. And they don't have that mentor figure. Their fathers a lot of times aren't there, or they're not able to be that mentor to them. And that makes a really big difference, right? So let's look at this one here. I want to show you this one here. So there's a professor at USC, by the way. His name is Daniel Durbin, and I've read a lot of his stuff, but he's a professor of communication and director of the Institute of Sports at USC. And this is what he says. He says the rules in sport set up value expectations, right? That's exactly what they do. It's good for you to struggle and try hard and strive, right? That's good. It's bad for you to be lazy. So athletes in the performance of sport embody a set of values. So athletes today, however, they aren't simply athletes today. Athletes have basically 3 lives. Okay? They have a private life, they have an athlete life, and they have a celebrity life. And because of social media, we are on top of all of that, right? We can see everything that's going on in their lives all the time. And those are the 3 lives that they're living today. It's very different. Let's talk about a couple of these right here. Let's talk about Lamar. Okay. I could talk about some current athletes, but these are, I remember when Lamar first came into the league, he first came onto the Clippers. That guy was unreal. He was like Kevin Garnett before Kevin Garnett, or, he was before, the guy was incredible at his height. He was like, 6'10", 6'11". He was, already dribbling down the court as one of the best, big men ever. And the guy had handles. He had serious handles, incredible court awareness. And when he first came out, that first year or two with the Clippers, we saw just incredible specimen, an amazing basketball player. And then we didn't see him kind of ever come back to that state again. And I followed him ever since he came into the league. And it's almost like he could never get back to that place of consistent brilliance. There were moments of brilliance all of a sudden, and he won some championships. He was on the Lakers. He was 6th man of the year, I think once or twice, which is still amazing. But he was never able to get back there again. And unfortunately, here's a guy who had a pretty big sphere of influence, right? But he wasn't able to leave the legacy that I think is the most important legacy. And that's what I'm going to get into a little bit on this. What did he do? We know Lamar as an incredible basketball player. We know that if you look at his stats and the things that he did in his career, is incredible. What he didn't leave, unfortunately, is, I think, again, the most important things that our young people should be seeing today in our athletes. Resilience, emotional mastery. There's things like, I'm going to get into that a little later, but you remember what happened with Lamar after his career even. That's when you saw it really get ugly, didn't you? He went kind of nuts. He was addicted to drugs. He made some really he experienced radical loss, by the way, after his career was over. He made some really poor decisions and caused a lot of pain for himself and for a lot of people. And so, unfortunately, you saw this. I always think about professional athletes. If they end up going there, it's such a ripoff for them. It's such a ripoff because they have so much going for them and so much influence and they have this opportunity to reach so many people and better the world around them. And it's such a ripoff when they go the other direction, when they basically nosedive. And they cave in on themselves. It's just a sad thing. It's a really sad thing to see. It's heartbreaking. And so you saw that happen with Lamar, and it was just sad to see where he went. And then you have somebody like this. Here's an interesting one right here. Here's Lance, okay? Now, here's another one. Lance was probably one of the biggest athletes in our lifetime because, as you know, his sport is a worldwide sport, and cycling is massive, and the Tour de France is huge. And I was an avid cyclist for years when I was younger, and Greg LeMond was kind of the American before him, and I used to worship Greg LeMond. And when I saw Greg LeMond's last event, the Tour de France, the last one that he won, I think he won 3. The way he won it was unreal. It was supernatural. The way he came back in the last time trial to win. And he really seemed to set a really good example for other riders for other young riders. Well, you know what happened with Lance. Here was an incredible story. This guy has done so much good in his life. The Cancer Institute, his Cancer Institute that has raised millions and millions and millions of dollars and helped so many cancer victims. And of course, he came out of cancer himself. He had testicular cancer, and he came back from that and started to come back, and in his cycling career. Remember, he had never won a tour, and then he found out he had cancer. Cancer went into remission, and he began to. It's kind of like he had a next level in him. Well, we all know now what the next level was. Okay. Unfortunately, the next level for Lance, and the reason why he pulled away from so many so well, is because he was kind of blood doping is what he was doing. And we found that out later. After he wins 6, I want to say maybe even 7 tours, but he definitely won 6, which is ridiculous. Just to win 1 is amazing. But he won like 6 or 7. And it was after that, a year after, I think he retired, that it came out. In fact, I don't even think he retired, and it came out that he had been blood doping. One of his teammates came out, and then all the team got busted because he introduced all of the team to blood doping. It's pretty sophisticated what he was doing. But he left, unfortunately, again. What do you remember Lance for now? Nobody remembers from all the Tour de France that he won. Nobody remembers him for his unbelievable work in philanthropy and in the cancer research. They remember him for his cheating, right? He's at the bottom of the barrel now, right? He is wrecked. Not only his name, I would just consider it like a blast radius. When you do something as big as him, it wreaks it doesn't wreak havoc. For some, it does, because I know a lot of people that really did mess them up. A lot of us who were riding at the time looked at Lance as this incredible role model. He was doing more than any professional athlete that we could ever remember. He was doing more. He was showing us how to come back even after, something like cancer. It's unbelievable. And so when that happened, I remember personally just going through a process of grieving. I grieved this model that I had looked at, that I had used as a form of inspiration for me, right? I really looked at him like that. And so it was really sad to see how all of it came down. So what was Lance? What were we looking to Lance for? We were looking to Lance for this incredible character, this resilience, right? Resilience. And that's something that these professional athletes, a lot of times that's what we're looking for. We're looking at character, attributes like resilience and confidence and things like commitment. Those are the things that we're looking at with these pro athletes. And when they don't do that, remember, just like when our parents don't do it, something in our heads go a little weird. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to get at here is, unfortunately, we tend to look at athletes as these role models more when we don't have any healthy role models in our life at all. If you have a mentor in your life, it's likely that you're not going to have such a heavy dependency on a professional athlete, because a lot of those needs that you have are being met. A lot of those things that are being modeled for you are being met by your mentor or other, healthy figures in your life, okay? Healthy male figures in your life. Hopefully you're going to be getting that. That's why dads are so critical. So any of your dads, if you're listening to this, just know that you hold so much weight. Your child can be, can love that to look at a pro athlete and look at him as a role model, but the ultimate role model is always going to be you. He's going to pick up his character from you. Your deposits that you make into him or her, those are going to be the most impactful deposits ever made into their life, more than Lance or Lamar could ever do. Okay. Do you guys remember? Oh my gosh, what was his name? Josh Hamilton. He played on the Rangers. He came over to the Angels. I think he was home run king once or twice, but he was an incredible athlete, man. Just an all-around amazing athlete. But he began to spiral. He struggled with drugs throughout, his career, and he made some really bad decisions. And then, gosh, around 2017 or 15 or something, he was violent. He was charged with domestic violence, and I think it was toward I think it was his daughter. And again, here's a guy who has such a radical sphere of influence and sabotages it all with poor behavior, right? With a lack of emotional mastery. Again, that's one of the things we're talking about here. Let me see if I can put that up in a second here. Let's do this first. Let me get rid of Lance. Let's talk about this. What do we need to understand? We need to understand and accept that pro athletes can, and most often, take their dysfunctional script into their careers. Okay? We must learn to hold our role models loosely with compassion, knowing that they're human. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? It's like we have to understand that these people are human. They're going to make mistakes. There's no question they're going to make mistakes. But they're going to take their dysfunctional script into their career. Do you understand what that means? Let me tell you what a dysfunctional script is, what I mean by that. They're going to take their emotional baggage into their careers. There's no doubt. Okay, whatever underdeveloped part of them that there is, they're taking that into their career. And that's where you see some athletes who take their dysfunctional script, like for instance, their dysfunctional script might be when it's activated, it might be, that I'm being disrespected. Maybe disrespected is a belief in their head that gets activated in their career. And so what do they do when that dysfunctional script gets activated, that false belief that they bring into their adult life and into their career? They're going to sabotage their career. Whatever activates that I'm being disrespected belief is going to get activated, and they're going to do something about it. You're going to see a manifestation, a behavior that's going to most likely get them into some big trouble, right? What about lack of emotional mastery, resilience, things like that? Well, if you don't have that growing up, if that isn't something that was deposited into you growing up, and let's just say, you weren't given those deposits, well, it's likely that when you get into your career that you're going to be difficult. You're not going to be able to handle some of the distress that's coming at you. You're going to have a hard time with it, right? You're going to react. Again, you're going to react with tantrums, you're going to react with fits. You might just react with medicating. A lot of pro athletes end up medicating, right? Because they can't handle the criticism that might be coming at them, right? Again, these are dysfunctional script. So here's the last thing I want to share with you. Here's interesting. Look at this. This to me is what we really need to be looking at. What pro athletes need to be considering, okay? They need to be considering that the impact and the legacy, the greater and deeper and wider impact that they have on society is to model discipline. It's to model teamwork. It's to model things like taking direction. They need to model resilience. They need to model confidence. They need to model emotional mastery. They need to model sacrifice, what it means to sacrifice. They need to model consistency. They need to model contentment or commitment, and they need to model things like ethics. And humility, by the way. They need to model humility. These are just some of the things right here. This is the deeper stuff. Now, a lot of people look at athletes like LeBron James, who today a lot of people would consider he is the epitome of the role model athlete, right? But what people are looking at, a lot of people are looking at with that is his philanthropy, his giving back, his charity donations, right? He gives a lot of money to charity. That is awesome. That is awesome. And he's taken some stance on some things, right? He has. I think those are admirable things. My challenge to the pro athlete of today is to go bigger than that. Can you go bigger than giving $40 million a year to charity? I mean, these things I'm talking about right here, these things, I think these things are bigger than that. Most of us are never going to be able to give that much money ever to charity, okay? We're not, right? We're not. So what I want to see from a pro athlete, I would love to see them modeling this more. Show us how to be more disciplined. Talk about your discipline. Talk about your resilience. I want to know how you get through those difficult days, where you're being criticized by your coach or your players. Talk to me about, I want to know how you practice humility on the court. What does the compassion look like? I really want to know about emotional mastery. Tell me how you deal with distress. I would love to know that. I mean, all we see is basically the scenery. I would love to look at what's going on beyond the scenery with our pro athletes today. Okay. A long time ago, before I kind of got into the work that I do now, I worked with some college athletes, and they're fascinating. Some of the better pro athletes, they're incredible. In fact, I know a young man right now who's, in AAA, baseball. He's phenomenal. He's an up and comer. He's definitely going to make it in the MLB. Why? Or how do I see his career playing out? I see him being really consistent. I see him going into the league with a lot of these. Why? Because of his dad. And that's why I know this kid, because I've known his dad for 40 years. And his dad has overcome radical issues in his life, huge problems in his life. He's overcome them. He has modeled for his son what a comeback looks like. And to come back from what his dad has come back from, he had to practice humility. He had to practice resilience. He had to practice emotional mastery for sure. Sacrifice, tons of sacrifice. Commitment for sure. And one of the things he really had to practice too was teamwork. Like, there's no way his dad could have overcome those things unless it was from the help of other people. So let me go back for a second. Okay, I want to go back to something that I mentioned earlier from where is it here? Let me see if I can find it here. Professor Durbin at USC, I read that to you, but there's also another guy that I thought had such an interesting take. And so let me read this to you. Let me get this off the screen. Ken Germano, was a former member of the Italian national baseball team. This guy is pretty awesome. He was a former Olympic athlete, former professional baseball player. He knew what he had signed up for in terms of becoming a child's role model. I really agree with his take on being a role model. Okay, this is him. This is what he says. In Italy, because baseball was so special at the time, kids would knock on our door at 7:30 in the morning asking for an autograph. Even if we got in at 4 a.m., it didn't matter. These kids would come and knock on our door for an autograph. They were so excited. They were so cute, he says. How could you refuse them and not want to help in any way that you possibly could? Everyone on the field is in a position, he says, to be a role model, even the bullpen catcher. You put them in a uniform, you should be ready for everything that comes with it and the consequences of your actions. And by the way, that's one today that unfortunately a lot of pro athletes don't, unfortunately, I think, experience consequences. And so they're not modeling how to take ownership, right? There's another one. I should have put that on the list. Ownership. Ken goes even further. He says, this means that if you don't understand something, you need to ask questions until you do, right? I mean, that's powerful. He also talks a bit about parents, because Ken, he has a lot of empathy for parents, but he agrees that it's their responsibility, is what he really believes to be the child's primary. Remember, primary. Athletes can be role models, but he thinks that parents should be. In fact, this is what he says. I think it's much tougher being a parent than an athlete, as your kids watch and see your every single move, not just the big ones. See, and that's what we see with athletes. We just see their big moves. We don't see how those athletes deal in a moment, again, under distress. How do they deal with it? But we see that in our parents, don't we? In the end, it comes down to the parents, not celebrity athletes. Okay? So I just want to throw a little bit of that commentary on there. I really do think we've got to be careful today about our role models, our celebrity athletes. They're incredible. They're superhumans. But let's be cautious around how much dependency and reliance that we're putting on them. Let's be better parents. Let's try to be better role models for our kids. And like Charles Barkley said, again, I really do think that, I'm going to go back to this just one more time. What he says here, I'm not paid to be a role model. I'm paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. I'm not a role model. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I raise your kids. Again, that's true. And also, you are. So we can't help it. We're going to look to these people. We're going to look to them, to meet some of those needs that we're looking for, right? We aspire to be like them. A lot of them have come from very little, and all of us love that story, and we see a little bit of us in them, and they motivate us, they inspire us, right? My heart's been broken by professional athletes of the past. I mentioned Lance and even Josh Hamilton. I loved him, and I connected with his story. So I was so sad to see him not take ownership, basically. If he would have taken ownership, I think he would have gotten a lot of help that he needed. And he didn't. And I'm sad for a lot of these athletes that are not showing us how to take ownership, because that would be a massive deposit that they can put into our kids, right? So there you go. There's just some of my thoughts. Okay, you guys, I hope that just rings a bell. The reason I thought I would do this, like I said, is because recently, there's just been such a lot of, there's always stuff coming up about our pro athletes, right? But recently I've connected with some athletes that I really like, and they've been making some boneheaded moves. And I'm thinking a lot of young people are looking to these pro athletes, and they're losing a lot of hope because they're seeing just a lack of character in these athletes. The other guys I didn't even mention, but look at Tiger Woods, man. Tiger Woods I remember when Tiger was a kid and he was on the Johnny Carson show. Any of you remember that? When he actually was this tiny little kid, and his dad brought him on the show. I think he was like 3 years old, and he brought him on the show, and he hit some crazy drivers, I think, on the show. So to see him go down the way that he did, was absolutely heartbreaking. Remember, though, he brought his dysfunctional script into his career, and there was no way around it. Okay, his dad modeled stuff for him that unfortunately Tiger took with him into his career, and he did what his role model taught him to do, unfortunately. So what's Tiger been doing now? I hope he's been trying to write a new script, okay? Because there's nothing like a comeback. When we see a comeback story, and one of the greatest comeback stories I've ever seen is Kobe Bryant. Kobe, unfortunately, messed up a lot of people around the world because of the accusation that the worst accusation of all that you can have against you as a pro athlete. And what was so amazing about him, and so unfortunate as well, fortunate that he had a comeback the way he did. That guy reclaimed his family. He recovered his marriage and his family and really made a massive correction. That is a comeback story. That spoke to me, as a fan, more than his basketball legacy. Okay? What stood out more to me was what it took for him to basically recovery in his marriage and in his family. That recovery speaks way more volumes to me about anything that Kobe has ever done. It's how he came back and repaired his family. That took huge resilience. That took a lot of humility. That took tons and tons of work in order to get back his family the way that he did. I mean, remember, Vanessa was on her way out, man. There was no question. I mean, she didn't have the ring. If you live here in LA, you kind of heard a little bit more, I think. And it was just really sad to see all that. But the comeback story, that's what's up. The unfortunate part to me is how he died, and everybody else in that helicopter died. But it was such a loss for so many, because Kobe was about ready to break out and to be, in my opinion, that really big sphere of influence, a greater influence. You know, he was sharing more about his comeback, you know, his real comeback in his family. And that's what I was so looking forward to him sharing. Anyway, so there's some pretty neat stuff that I think we can leave for next time, right? But let's keep talking about, you know, the influence, the societal impact of these guys. If they take personal responsibility, they're, in my opinion, again, they're living out the contract that they signed. You don't get to choose to be a role model, man. When you sign that contract, you just are. You can't force us not to look at you as a role model. We're gonna. It's built in, okay? We're just all on a spectrum. Some of us are gonna depend and rely on you more as a role model, and some are going to depend and rely on you less as a role model. But we're all on the spectrum. We're all looking at you as fans as a role model to some degree. So take heed, pro athlete, all right? Know that it is your responsibility. Just like at the head of any company, it's your responsibility. You are held to higher standards. You just are. I'm sorry that you are, but you are. So, and it could be a good thing, because it can look at it as personal growth. If you assume that responsibility as a pro athlete, you're just going to become a better person. Don't you want to become more resilient? Be more responsible. Don't you just want to have more emotional mastery? It makes you a better person. So get into therapy if you need to. I think every pro athlete should be two things. They should all have a therapist, and they should all have a mentor. Every single one of them. A sponsor, I should say. I think a sponsor is even better. Somebody who can kind of be a coach, a sponsor like a coach, you know, a life coach, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's what all of them need, because they're living at a whole other level. They're under the spotlight. You know, their whole life, you know, is available to us to see, right? Okay, everybody. Well, hey, if you watch this restream, I hope you get something out of it. Leave me a comment, you know, if you watch this, and let me know what you think. And you might want to even, you know, let me know if there's something else that you might want me to break down, because I'm going to be doing a little bit more of these kinds of videos, because I mean, I'm definitely a sports nut, but I also want to always go behind the scenes. I'm always looking at pulling the curtain back. I'm always looking at going beyond the scenery into, you know, the stuff that we're dealing with today, especially our pro athletes, right? So I hope that was good. Until next time, we will talk later. See you, everybody.